Many of you may recognise Gunhild from the television series Vikings, where she is portrayed as the wife of Bjorn Ironside. However, the historical Gunhild was quite different. Far from being a shieldmaiden, she was instead famed for her sorcery and striking beauty. She was the wife of Erik Bloodaxe, the son of Harald Fairhair and the King of Norway. In time, she came to be known as the Mother of Kings, as her sons would go on to claim power over Norway. Gunhild appears in more than 5 Norse and Icelandic sagas, and in nearly all of them, she plays the role of the villain. Her husband, Erik Blood-axe, is scarcely given his own chapter in the Heimskringla, meaning the Saga of Norwegian Kings, largely because he was deeply unpopular. Many believed it was Gunhild who whispered poison into his ear, steering him with her influence. Snorri Sturleson himself stated, "Of Erik Bloodaxe's 5 years in power, there is no separate saga. He appears not to have been loved by the people, and his queen Gunhild seems to have been a bad influence on him." In the sagas, Gunhild is almost always cast in a dark light. She is portrayed as a formidable figure, admired for her beauty and generosity, yet feared for her magic, cunning, and ruthless ambition. She is remembered as a woman of power and cruelty, and as someone whose insatiable desires and sharp intellect made her both captivating and dangerous. This is her story. In the Historia Norvegae, a source written by an anonymous monk in around the year 1170, it states Erik Bloodaxe obtained the kingdom after his father and took a wife from Denmark, Gunhild, who was cruel and double-dyed in wickedness, daughter of the Danish king Gorm the Old. This source attests to Gunhild being a Danish princess. If this is true, then Gunhild was a direct descendant of Ragnar Lothbrok, as Gorm the Old was the grandson of Sigurd Snake in the Eye, whose father was Ragnar, imbuing her lineage with that of legendary heroes. However, in the Heimskringla, her origins are different. It states, when Erik was 12, King Harald gave him 5 longships, and he set off raiding. For 4 years, he campaigned through the Baltic, Denmark, Friesland, and Saxland. He then spent another 4 years raiding westward, plundering in Scotland, Wales, Ireland, and Valland. Afterward, he sailed to the distant north to Finnmark. In Finnmark, Erik's men discovered an extraordinarily beautiful girl in a Sami hut. She called herself Gunhild, daughter of Ozor Tot of Halogaland. She claimed to be learning sorcery from 2 powerful Sami shamans who were away hunting, and who both sought her hand in marriage. She warned they were dangerously skilled, able to track on any terrain, shoot with perfect aim, and run faster than any beast. When angered, their gaze alone could kill. Gunhild offered to hide Erik's men and help slay the shamans. She spread enchanted ashes around the hut to mask their presence. When the men returned, they sensed intruders but found no trace. That night, exhausted from rivalry and sleeplessness, the shamans accepted Gunhild's invitation to lie beside her. She lulled them into a deep sleep, placed sealskin bags over their heads, and signalled Erik's men, who rushed in and killed them. At dawn, they brought Gunhild to Erik, who was captivated. They sailed south to Halogaland, where Erik asked her father Ozor Tot for her hand in marriage. He agreed, and in the year 922, Erik took Gunhild as his wife and continued southward with her. Harald Fairhair, through conquest, unified Norway under a single crown, becoming the nation's first king. By the time he reached the age of 50, many of his sons had come of age, and several had already committed acts of violence and unrest throughout the realm. In response, the aging king summoned a great thing, a formal assembly in the southern part of the country, calling upon the peoples of the uplands to attend. There he declared all his sons to be kings and established a law that only his male line descendants would inherit the royal title and dignity, while those born through the female line would bear only the rank of earl. Among many of his sons, Erik was the king's favourite, and it was expected that he would rule as High King over all of his brothers. When Harald reached the age of 80, he grew feeble and was no longer able to govern or travel across the kingdom. He then raised Erik to the high seat and entrusted him with full authority over the realm. However, Erik's rule was not uncontested. His brother Olaf, king of the Viking, refused to pay him tribute. Likewise, Sigurd, king of Trondheim, and another of Erik's brothers, withheld tribute as well. In a fierce and nameless battle, Erik slew both Olaf and Sigurd, acts that would earn him the name Bloodaxe. Erik's wife Gunhild was widely believed to possess or employ magical powers. Around the time of King Harald's death, Erik's popular half-brother Halfdan Haraldsson the Black died under mysterious circumstances. Many suspected that Gunhild had bribed a witch to brew him a fatal death drink. According to the Heimskringla, Erik was a tall and striking man, strong and courageous, and skilled in warfare. Though fortunate in battle, he was known for his grim nature. He was bad-minded, unfriendly, and silent. Gunhild, his queen, was considered the most beautiful of women, clever, spirited, and deeply knowledgeable. Yet she was also thought to be deceitful and cruel in heart. Erik and Gunhild had several sons, Gamle the eldest, followed by Guthorm, Harald, Rangfrod, Ragnhild, Erling, Gudrod, and Sigurd Sleva, all said to be handsome and of strikingly noble appearance. According to Egill Saga, the famed Viking warrior Egill Skallagrímsson once wandered upon a great Viking hall, unaware that King Erik Bloodaxe and Queen Gunhild were also in attendance, touring their dominions across Norway. During the feast, Egill behaved with bold defiance. He drank excessively, calling again and again for his horn to be refilled, showing no restraint nor courtesy. Alarmed by his unruly conduct, the host approached the queen and said, "There is a man here who brings shame upon us, for no matter how much ale he drinks, he still cries out that he is thirsty." Displeased, Queen Gunhild took matters into her own hands. She poisoned a drink and brought it to Egill herself, bidding him drink deeply. But Egill, no mere warrior, was also a man of magic. Sensing treachery, he pricked his palm and let his blood flow. Carving runes into the horn, he smeared it with his blood and chanted a spell. At once, the horn split apart in his hands, spilling the poisoned ale onto the straw-covered floor. Later, in the year 930, Egill became entangled in a bitter inheritance dispute with members of King Erik's court. In the course of the quarrel, he slew one of the king's retainers. Enraged, Queen Gunhild commanded her two brothers to hunt down and kill Egill and his brother Thorolf. When they came for them, Egill fought back fiercely and killed them both, deepening the queen's thirst for vengeance. From that day forth, King Erik and Queen Gunhild declared Egill an outlaw, banishing him from Norway. Thus began a bitter and enduring blood feud. As Egill fled the country, he killed Rognvald Eriksson, the son of King Erik, delivering a devastating blow to both Bloodaxe and Gunhild. In a final act of defiance, Egill performed a heathen curse upon the royal pair. He raised a horse's head upon a pole and called upon the spirits of the land to turn against Erik and Gunhild, to drive them from the soil they ruled, and to sow misfortune in their path. Egill escaped to Iceland, but Gunhild's wrath followed him. She wove a dark enchantment of her own, cursing Egill to find no peace in Iceland until their paths crossed once more. Haunted by her spell, Egill soon fell into deep melancholy and, restless in spirit, he took again to the sea. Though King Erik Bloodaxe had slain many of his brothers and brought all of Norway under his dominion, his rule was marked by harshness and cruelty. Harald Fairhair, Erik's father, and the first king of a united Norway, had sired a son late in life, Hakon, who would be remembered to history as Hakon the Good. Born when Harald was nearly 70, and most of his sons were already grown men, the young Hakon was sent far from home for his safety. He was entrusted to the care of King Ethelstan of England, who raised him at his royal court. Even at the age of 14, Hakon harboured the ambition to reclaim his birthright and become the King of Norway. Recognising his potential, Ethelstan equipped his foster son with a fleet of ships and a loyal band of warriors, enough to make the voyage home in royal fashion. Due to the cruelty of Erik and Gunhild's reign, Hakon's return to Norway was welcomed by many. The people swiftly proclaimed him king, and Erik and Gunhild were driven into exile. According to the Icelandic sagas, the exiled royal family sailed westward, eventually settling in Orkney, where Erik was acknowledged as king of Orkney by its ruling jarls. They remained there for a time, before journeying south to Jorvik, modern-day York, in northern England. There, at the invitation of Bishop Wulfstan, Erik was offered a new kingdom. According to the Heimskringla, King Ethelstan, out of respect for the long-standing friendship between himself and King Harald Fairhair, sent envoys to Erik proposing an arrangement. He offered Erik dominion over Northumbria, to rule as a client king under the English crown, charged with defending the region from Danish and Viking incursions. As part of the agreement, Erik and his household were to accept baptism, embracing the Christian faith. Erik accepted the offer. He, Queen Gunhild, their children, and all who had followed them were baptized and received into the Christian fold. The once pagan king and queen found new thrones in exile and a new life under the cross. Gunhild would serve as the Queen of Northumbria from the year 947. Egill, Gunhild's old nemesis, would arrive in Northumbria shipwrecked from his journey from Iceland. To his astonishment, he found out that the King and Queen of Northumbria were Erik and Gunhild. He would arrive at their court, and Erik sentenced him to death, but Egill composed a poem so beautiful and masterful in a single night, that when it was recited to the king in the morning, Erik gave Egill his freedom, against Gunhild's wishes. Erik Bloodaxe met his end in the year 954, at the fateful Battle of Stainmore. According to the Heimskringla, while King Ethelstan had maintained cordial relations with the Norse rulers, his successor and brother King Eadred did not share the same goodwill. Determined to reclaim control over Northumbria, Eadred assembled a great army of Englishmen. In the fierce battle that ensued, Erik was slain, and with him fell the last Norse rule in northern England. In the wake of his death, Queen Gunhild, mourning her husband, had a poem composed in his honour. It was called the Eriksmal, meaning the Lay of Erik, a powerful and solemn song that immortalised the warrior king's valour and his ascent to Valhalla. After the death of Erik Bloodaxe at the Battle of Stainmore in the year 954, Gunhild, now widowed and dispossessed, sought refuge across the sea. She found sanctuary in Denmark, at the court of King Harald Bluetooth, a powerful monarch who ruled with ambition and cunning. In Denmark, Gunhild remained a formidable presence. Her son Harald was taken under the wing of King Harald Bluetooth himself and raised as a royal fosterling. Her other sons were likewise welcomed with honour, granted lands, titles, and positions of influence within the Danish realm. Though in exile, Gunhild never relinquished her ambition. With a fierce will and shrewd political mind, She urged her sons to reclaim what she saw as their rightful inheritance, the throne of Norway. She became the architect of their return, and her influence was felt in every decision they made. With King Harald Bluetooth embroiled in hostilities against King Hakon the Good of Norway, it was politically expedient for him to use Gunhild's sons as instruments of war, both as a threat to Hakon and as potential rulers loyal to Denmark. In this turbulent climate, Gunhild's eldest surviving son, Gamle, led a campaign into Norway, but in around the year 960, he fell in battle against King Hakon, dying a warrior's death in the bid to reclaim his father's throne. Fate, however, would soon turn in Gunhild's favour. In the year 961, the legendary Battle of Fitjar took place. Though King Hakon's forces emerged victorious on the battlefield, the king himself suffered a mortal wound. Before dying, Hakon, beloved for his fairness and Christian piety, was said to have expressed a wish that Gunhild's sons be allowed to rule in peace, rather than plunge the land into further bloodshed. With Hakon's death, Norway was left leaderless. Seizing the opportunity, Gunhild returned to her homeland in triumph. Backed by Danish arms and the legacy of her slain husband, her son Harald, known as Harald Greycloak, claimed the kingship. His brothers ruled alongside him, each granted dominion over regions of the fractured realm. From this time forward, Gunhild was no longer merely a queen in exile, she became the mother of kings. She was the guiding force behind her sons' rule, their political advisor, and in many ways, the true power behind the throne. Harald Greycloak, the foremost among Gunhild's sons, reigned as the High King over his brothers. During his time on the throne, Gunhild held great sway at the court, so much so that according to the Heimskringla, she took deep part in the governance of the realm. Her influence was neither subtle nor symbolic. She was a commanding force in the shaping policy and the exercise of power. Under the rule of Harald Greycloak and his brothers, many of Norway's jarls and petty kings were slain or deposed. Their lands and titles were seized, consolidating power in the hands of Gunhild's sons. Their campaign of conquest and centralization, though politically effective, came at great cost. The realm was soon gripped by famine, a blight that may have been worsened, if not directly caused, by the unrest and destruction wrought by these aggressive campaigns. As the nobility fell and the fields lay untended, the people suffered, and Harald's reign was increasingly marked by hardship and hunger. Through it all, Gunhild remained at the heart of power, a queen mother whose hand was seen in every decision, and whose ambition shaped the fate of the kingdom. Gunhild, the queen mother of Norway, became both patron and the lover to Harald Helgjorfsson, a distinguished Icelandic chieftain who visited the Norwegian court during the reign of her son Harald Greycloak. Their relationship caused no small stir, not only due to Gunhild's royal status, but also because she was significantly older than Harald, a generational divide that did not go unnoticed by those at court, or the sagas that recorded their tale. Gunhild made no attempt to conceal her affection. She lavished Harald with public displays of intimacy, usually reserved for a husband and wife, often embracing him tenderly and placing her arms above his neck in full view of the court. She had him sleep with her alone in her private upper chamber. The Laxdæla saga offers a vivid glimpse into the depth of her infatuation. It declares, Gunhild, the queen, loved him so dearly that she believed there was no man in the Kingsguard who could rival him in speech or in deed. And even when the noblest men were named and praised, it was plain to all that in her eyes, any claim to Harald's equal must be born of envy or sheer foolishness. Gunhild even orchestrated the death of a rival, a man named Soti, in order to secure Harald's rightful inheritance. This was carried out by her servant with the assistance of her son Gudrod, demonstrating the Queen's willingness to bend royal power to serve her personal affections. Yet her favour, though intense, was not without its price. Upon Hrut's departure from Norway, she showered him with generous gifts, but when she learned he was to marry another, Gunhild's affection turned to bitterness. In an act of cruel sorcery, she laid a curse upon him, dooming him to suffer from priapism, the symptoms being a prolonged and painful erection, which ultimately drove the couple to divorce. The queen who had elevated Hrut to prominence also ensured his downfall in love, proof of the peril that laid in crossing Gunhild, the mother of kings, a woman as dangerous as she was powerful. During the turbulent era when Gunhild and her sons extinguished the power of Norway's nobles and petty kings, one of their most notable victims was Sigurd Håkonsson, the Earl of Lade, and the trusted advisor to King Hakon the Good. With Sigurd's death, his son Hakon the Powerful rose to prominence, asserting his claim over his father's lands. Through cunning diplomacy, Hakon the Powerful persuaded King Harald Bluetooth of Denmark to betray Harald Greycloak, resulting in Greycloak's assassination. This treachery ignited a brutal civil war between Jarl Hakon and the surviving sons of Erik and Gunhild. Ultimately, Hakon emerged victorious, forcing Gunhild and her remaining sons once more into exile. They sought refuge in Orkney, using the islands as a strategic base from which to launch raids against Hakon's territories, although all of these raids were unsuccessful. According to the Viking saga, Gunhild eventually returned to Denmark in around the year 977, only to meet a grim fate. On the orders of King Harald Bluetooth, she was drowned in a bog. If this account is true, and Gunhild is the daughter of Gorm the Old, then she was killed by her own brother. Gunhild's extraordinary power and singular role within the Norwegian court was unheard of. Not only did she wield authority as queen consort, but she also ruled with fierce command over Orkney and Northumbria for a time. Her influence stretched well beyond the reign of her husband, King Erik Bloodaxe, growing even more potent during the rule of her sons, particularly Harald Greycloak. Yet it was not only her political acumen that marked her legacy. The sagas paint Gunhild as a dangerous woman, known for her bewitching beauty and rumoured to possess dark magical powers, her name entwined with sorcery. Tales speak of her mastery of a form of ancient Norse magic, and how her cunning and supernatural influence shaped the fates of kings and men alike. The sagas rarely cast her in a favourable light. Instead, they depict her with suspicion, portraying her as ruthless, vengeful, and steeped in sorcery. Remarkably, the Heimskringla, which offers extensive narratives for many Norwegian monarchs, does not dedicate a single chapter to King Erik Bloodaxe or his formidable queen Gunhild, despite the significant events that marked their reign. Their story is scattered, woven into the accounts of other kings, as though the chronicles could not bear or dared not give them a place of honour in the royal lineage. Such was their dark and fearsome legacy, that even the keepers of history hesitated to give them centre stage, choosing instead to let their reputations linger like shadows across the margins of other men's stories. I would like to give a huge thank you to all of my members. Your contribution is valuable to the continuation of the channel, and I appreciate you all immensely. A special thank you to John Sites. I hope you all enjoyed the video. If you did, be sure to like, subscribe and share, and I'll see you all next week for another History Profile.